The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and/or the persons appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of FRC Media, Bristol Community College, or the City of Fall River.
Thank you for joining us today. I'm Keith Tebow at FRC Media. As we head closer to the November 5th election, we're trying to get voters in Fall River educated on some of the people running in the election, but also some of the issues that voters will see when they go to the ballot on November 5th. That includes the 5 ballot initiative questions that are on the Massachusetts ballot. Today, we're going to focus on question 2. And question 2 would eliminate the requirement that students pass the Massachusetts Comprehensive Assessment System, or MCAS test, as a requirement to graduate high school. On this interview, we're going to be speaking to the proponents to vote yes on question 2, and I'm pleased to be joined today by Deb McCarthy. She is a 5th grade educator, as well as the vice president of the Massachusetts Teachers Association. The MTA is one of the leading drivers of those in support of question 2. Deb, thank you for joining me. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here.
One of the things I like to ask, those that we're speaking to in terms of the ballot questions, as a first question, is pretty simple. If you had like an elevator speech for people on why they should vote yes on question 2, what would you tell them?
I would say the following. It is really important to acknowledge that the MCAS is not a standard, that we have gold standards, the best standards in the country, that the MCAS is an event, an assessment that repetitively hurts the same type of learners, and it is not allowing all students to succeed.
When it comes to the ballot question and those who are in support, there's some communities in support, like in Fall River, where we are. We're, of course, a gateway city. The school committee has voted a resolution in favor of supporting yes on question 1. A gateway city like Fall. Question 2. I'm sorry, question 2. I apologize. Correct. Question 2. I'm getting my questions confused. I apologize for that. Yes, on question 2. And, Fall River being a gateway city, it appears that a lot of the struggles for students tend to happen in cities like Fall River. Is that what you're seeing as well in terms of, comparing urban communities with maybe suburban communities in terms of the need to do something like this?
100%. I think it's really important to acknowledge that I spent 25 years in the classroom, and when the MCAS first came out, I was known as the MCAS guru and cheerleader in my district. I really believed in the promise of an accountability system that was going to use data to help educators align our curriculum, align our best practices, but also then provide the resources and equity that were preventing us from providing the same educational opportunities that the neighboring communities were able to do. Over time, it took about a decade when I began to realize that this was actually a false promise. And instead of getting monies that would allow students in Hull to have science labs like the students in Wellesley were afforded, we actually had to eliminate the librarian position, the band program, because the high stakes of the testing kept increasing without the monies to provide some of the educational opportunities that others were receiving.
Yeah, I know that, one of the things that has been brought up, and, we've heard it from educators, not just here in Fall River, but in other communities, that it tends to stifle, I guess, creativity in the classroom for teachers, where they they feel the need to teach to the test, if you will, to make sure that their students succeed. How can you respond to that in terms of, the lack of, I guess, adaptability and allowing the, I guess, the academic freedom of teachers to teach in our communities.
Yeah, spot on. Agency and autonomy for educators with the testing curriculum is definitely removed. And so isn't the joy of the learning, but it's so much more than that. People talk about educators teaching to the test, and if they would just stop doing that, the high stakes and the anxiety would be removed. But it shows just how little the general public understands about these tests. These tests are constructed deliberately with the distractor. So there is always the next best answer, and it's really important for students like your dyslexic learners that you teach the skill of using a highlighter so that they are able to find that word not. A lot of times you can find an answer underneath a picture. And so there, in particular, with my math and science students who were really strong, could manipulate the data, they could see it, they construct it and use it in new and exciting ways. And then the question asked them to write 3 to 4 paragraphs on how they got their answer. And the paragraphs need to be formulated, and they get scored according to a strong topic sentence, the wrap-up sentence. And so the test itself is not the measure of the depth of the content that aligns with the standards, but it is a skill set. And so what is happening is students who are good test takers excel at the expense of students who are strong academically September through June, but are not sometimes the best test takers.
Yeah. Those who have come out in opposition to the ballot initiative say that, there needs to be a state standard in terms of making sure that all students in Massachusetts are at a comparable level, and that
Yeah.
if this is taken away, that there would be no clear academic standards in terms of statewide, and that since MCAS has been in effect, it's actually, put Massachusetts at the top of the list in terms of educational attainment. Is there maybe a way to do this that sort of satisfy the requirement, but also has some other state standards that could be acceptable?
So, really good question. Again, I want to reiterate that the MCAS is not a standard. And I also think it's really important. Some of the pushback that we get is for many on the opposing side of this ballot question, they say they align with us and that they have some issues. It's just that it shouldn't be a ballot question initiative. We have been trying for over a decade to get this issue on the table legislatively. And unfortunately, it took a ballot question to drive the change that is necessary, that educators, parents, community members, and students are making clear that they want to see in their classrooms. I also think it is really important to acknowledge that 83% of districts currently use Mass Core. We believe that is worthy of a conversation. Data suggests strongly that those districts who are being denied this rigorous pathway of courses in the high school experience happen to be denied this once again based upon the fiscal resources in the communities. And some of the gateway communities that you talk about do not have the funds to hire the instructors to provide these rigorous course expectations.
You mentioned that MCAS itself is not a standard, and it's going to be clear. It should be clear to note that even if this were to pass, the test itself will still be administered. It's
That's right.
just that the graduation requirement will be removed from this. So I guess my question is, can there be any standards that can be a one size fits all? I know part of this will, if the issue passes, going to be back down to the communities to sort of set those graduation standards. I guess the question is, should there be a state standard for graduation in Massachusetts? I guess that's the question, right?
Well, we have the standards, right? Many districts have standard-based report cards. Our curriculum needs to be aligned to the standards. Educators are evaluated on the standards. In my district, we pick power standards, and we have to demonstrate with our in-class assignments, with our performance-based tasks, with our assessments, our classworks. At the high school level, lesson plans are put up on web pages for parents to access and see how the lessons and the assessments all align with the standards. All of that is there.
Let me just ask you in terms of, I had the opportunity to speak with someone in the business community who is supporting the no side of this, and I did ask some questions about the student the business side of things and whether this could impact having a skilled workforce. But let me actually ask you on the other side, what are you hearing from parents? Because it's the parents that sometimes those that work well with their children to try to succeed in the school, that sometimes they see that their students performing well in school but yet just not passing this test. What have the parents' reactions been?
Well, the parents have been front and center in this fight from the beginning. It's what got me engaged in this struggle. From a business community perspective, I think it's really important to acknowledge I'm the parent of 4, grandmother of 9, and my 4 adult children do not use the skill sets of being a test taker on the workforce. It is the ability to think outside the box, to have great time management skills, to be creative, diligent, articulate communicators, skills that are really important in the 21st century, especially in a global economy. Colleges don't ask for these MCAS scores, and even more telling, the MCAS aren't given at our private schools, and I don't hear businesses saying we don't hire grads from BC High, or we don't hire graduate students from the #1 prep school in the country that is here in Massachusetts, where parents will spend more than $250,000 at the end of the 4 years. We don't hear that. So I disagree that passing the MCAS is an indicator of success in the workforce for the 21st century. I think it just lays the foundation for who's a good test taker.
Yeah. Let me ask you, moving forward, as we get closer to Election Day, and the Mass Teachers Association and other organizations that are supporting Question 2, trying to get the word out there. There are some powerful, I'll call them lobbies. They may not necessarily be political lobbies that are on the other side. Superintendents Association, I believe, have voted that they are not in support, although some individual superintendents may.
Yeah, it was just their
seem otherwise.
executive committee. We
Right.
actually asked if we could appear before their executive committee to at least present, and we were told no. So I think that's really important. But
Right.
we've got endorsement from the Massachusetts Parent Teachers Association, the Massachusetts Nurses Association, the AFL-CIO, the Mass Voter Table just came out the other day. There are individual resolutions being passed throughout the Commonwealth at both the school committee, city council, and Democratic town committee level. So we have incredible support, and it would have been nice if we had had the opportunity to present the reasons why we believe this ballot should pass with the executive committee of the Superintendents Association.
Yeah. It also appears that Governor Healy seems to not necessarily be in support of this, as well as the Secretary of Education. Is that an issue?
I think it's really important to acknowledge that we have had some serious conversations about why the MCAS with both the governor and the Secretary of Education. is not the assessment tool for the 21st century that allows all learners to thrive. There are some who say, well, it's the fact that it was a ballot question that causes the concerns, but they have not been in their positions, like educators like me, for over a decade, who have been trying legislatively to get this done and had to leave the classroom and had no choice but to force it to a ballot question. So we are more aligned, I think, on the concerns of the test, but there were definitely some differences around the fact of it being a ballot question.
Yeah. All right, Deb McCarthy, fifth grade educator and vice president of the Massachusetts Teachers Association, here to ask voters to vote yes on question 2. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it, and all the best moving forward. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right. And thank you for joining us here on FRC Media. I'm Keith Tebow. Please make a point to vote on Tuesday, November 5th.